This game was played December 19th, 1959. It was the second round of the United States Chess Championship. Robert Byrne versus Bobby Fischer. Robert Eugene Byrne was born in New York on April 20th, 1928. He learned to play chess after visiting a local park and seeing some players there. He became an international master in 1952, a grandmaster in 1964, so at the time of this game, he hadn't achieved the GM title yet. 2 years after his GM title, he won the U.S. Open, tying actually with Paul Benko. The 1972 U.S. Championship served as an interzonal, and Byrne tied for first place in that, won a three-man playoff against Reshevsky and Kovalek, advancing to Leningrad. The Leningrad interzonal proved to be one of the highlights of his career. He finished only 1 point behind the tournament winners, Korchnoi and Karpov. He finished ahead of Bent Larsen, Mikhail Tal, Svetozar Gligarich, and so he advanced to the candidates' matches, but he lost his quarterfinal match against Boris Spassky. Robert Byrne passed away April 12, 2013, at the age of 84. Let's have a look. We have d4, knight f6, c4, and a little bit of a surprise from Bobby Fischer, who always plays the King's Indian defense, but he didn't play it here. Today, the East Indian defense with pawn e6, and after knight c3, surprise, surprise, Bobby transposes to a queen's gambit, declined, pawn d5. Byrne with the exchange variation, pawn takes pawn, knight takes pawn, knight f3, and another transposition, we go to a semi-tarash with c5. This is the main line. Now e3, knight c6, bishop c4, and knight takes knight is not the book move. The bot calling for pawn takes pawn. That is the book move. ECO is pawn takes pawn, bishop e7, and when we castle, we're actually transposing to a Caro-Kann defense, Panov's attack right here. So we've gone from the Indian game to a Caro-Kann, amazingly. That line continues with castles, rook e1, and here you can get either knight takes the knight or bishop to f6. I'll show both lines. On knight takes the knight, we're answered with pawn takes the knight, and then on b6, we get bishop d3 and bishop b7. Alternately, you can play bishop f6, and that's answered by knight e4, and the most common continuation here is b6. Bobby, not having any of that, played knight takes knight right away on move number 7. So pawn takes the knight, bishop e7 was played here, castles and castles. Now queen e2, now pawn b6 was played. Rook d1, queen c7, getting out of the rook's line of fire. Pawn e4, looks like the eval bar hinting in white's favor, but barely. The smallest little hint below center. Bishop b7, bishop e3, queen's rook to c8. Now bishop d3. That's marked inaccurate. I don't know. We'll chalk that up to Ficklebot's attitude. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, bishop a3. That's to prevent this queen's rook from coming to c1. e5 is played, opening this diagonal. Rook a b1 being recommended. And you could still try d5 here, I would imagine. Let's see what it says about d5. It gives me a star for that. But not the case in this game. e5 on the part of Robert Byrne. Knight b4 is played. Now it gives an inaccuracy. I do like this move. I like putting the question to this bishop here. Knight g5, now h6 is played, hitting the knight. Bishop h7, check. King h8, queen h5. Wow, double exclam for Robert Byrne. Very nice. Knight d5, bishop d3, queen e7, knight h7. My goodness. Of course, the threat is to capture this and open this. What a remarkable move. Clearing this path, attacking my rook, and getting ready to unleash a discovery against my king. Really good stuff by these players. That's just remarkable. All right, after knight h7, knight takes the bishop then to prevent him from capturing that. Pawn takes the knight, king's rook to d8. And that actually has the idea of rook c3, or if necessary, rook c7. Rook f1, rook d7. Battery defending the f-man. Pawn h4. I liked the idea of knight f6 here myself. It's marked as a mistake, but my point is he'd have to play his rook over. You do not want to take this. That's a blunder. Look at that. And it's a blunder because obviously you're being checkmated, aren't you? Forced here, and then defended by the bishop, and then that's just checkmate. The bot telling me my reasoning is unsound, but I like that move. In fact, the eval bar says I'm fine. The eval bar goes from 0.00 right now, and it's still 0.00, so I don't know why I get a mistake. So that would force rook d c7, and then he would probably have to play rook a d1. And if I play rooks, ooh, there's a double exclam. Thank you. Should have gotten a double exclam for this, in my humble opinion. And only if I play here do you have to move your knight. Back, 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 back. H4 from Robert Byrne, which is what the bot said was the best move. Knight f6, boy, tasty move in my opinion. All right, rook c3 is played here. So queen b4 apparently stays ahead-ish. Well, the eval bar says it's equal. And queen b4, knight g5 can be played. Still a cute move. And after queen b2, then you have knight takes the pawn here. Or queen d2, either or. The point is, knight takes the pawn is coming. Note on bishop e4, you get bishop takes bishop, knight takes bishop, and rook c2. Anyway, rook c3 from Fischer was played. Knight g5 is played here. Oh, another double exclam for Robert Byrne. Now, why didn't I get a double exclam when I offered knight g5, I ask you? Bobby does pick up the bishop here on d3. Rook takes the pawn on f7. And rook d2. Wow. Rook d2, ladles and jelly spoons. Now, what an amazing move is e4 here, interposing against this bishop. Right, the point is, I think if you take this, I'm going to give you check here. Oh, it says I'm inaccurate. Oh, because you're not forced this way. You could come this way, I suppose. Yeah, you can't come this way because... Okay, let's go back. E4, though, interfering with that idea. And so Bobby goes ahead and gives up his queen for the rook. The bot saying you should have played king g8. Ooh, look at the eval bar. The bot not liking it at all. Play king g8 is what the bot is saying. And on king g8, rook takes queen, rook takes rook, knight f3, I'm thinking, hit this rook. But you don't have to move your rook. You can counterattack his rook. Bishop here to b2, inviting him to take your rook, decoying the knight away from the defense of d4, simultaneously attacking his rook. Of course, he could always just play rook f1 and ignore your rook. I get a check for that. But still, bishop takes here, check, because I'm defended by my rook. And after king h2, rook f2, I can ignore that. And if rook d1 hitting my bishop, take this pawn. Let me think. I think I'll take this pawn. Let him take my bishop because this is actually pinning the knight to here. Yes, I get a star. Let him take the bishop because then I've got check here. And again, you can't come here or you lose your queen. So you'd have to come to h3. If you come here... You'd have to come to h3. And then I'd get my other rook into the game. Oh, okay. No, the knight covers. I don't know why it doesn't like rook c7. Queen takes the rook was played. Knight takes the queen with check. Rook takes the knight. Wow. Queen takes the rook. Astonishing. Bishop takes the e-man, super attacking the g-man. And now rook e1 is played. The bot calling for queen e8 check. I thought, why not grab this pawn and give yourself two center passed pawns? I get a star for this. Now black here can attack the rook and force him to e1. Exclam. But then check, that's a star. King h2, and then I can take bishop takes g2. Now if queen c8 check, right, king h7, give check, and then white's still winning here because I can come queen f4. So I liked queen takes e6. Seems like it was winning for me. Robert Byrne with rook e1. Rook takes g2 check. Yeah, play this first. That's still going to be there in a minute. Bobby goes ahead and plays the check. King f1, same comment as before. You can never play in line with this bishop or you will lose your queen. King f1, now bishop d5, and rook e2 to prevent me from putting my rook on d2 and getting behind this pawn. Do not play queen takes this pawn here. On queen takes pawn, I'm going to take your a-man, and after you take my b-man, I'm swinging back over here. That eval bar's close to equal here. So rook e2. Now rook g4, rook c2, king h7 here. Marked inaccurate. Take the pawn, says the bot. And that has an eye toward rook h1 check. And here again, after taking the pawn, white would not want to take this pawn. That would be a blunder as well. And the point here is after rook h1 check, king e2, black can take a repetition. Just chase this king around. Note that we control all of these squares, and so we've got the king contained. Check. You have to defend your rook and just keep giving check. And that will be a repetition. So don't play queen takes a7 there. After rook takes h4, he'd have to play the check here. Force my king to h7. Bobby played king h7 right away. We have pawn h5. And rook c8 is a checkmate threat, isn't it? If he can get the rook on c8, defending g8, the pawn covers g6, queen g8 would be checkmate. Bobby with rook g5, threatening to fork the queen and the king. So king e2 was played. Now, interesting that here queen takes a7 can finally be played. Let's go back for a second. The bot recommending to go ahead now and play queen takes a7. And on rook f5 check, king e2, bishop f3 check, king d2. I can give check on bishop b4, king d3, let's say. Let's bring the bishop back to d5. I think rook c7 and white is Jim Dandy. Black's got trouble. Instead, king e2 from Robert Byrne. Rook g2 check. King d3. Rook g3 check. King e2. Rook c8 should be played. I'm not sure what he's waiting for. He gives a check. King e3 was played. King f1 was recommended. On king f1, we get rook takes the rook. And after queen gives check, that forks the king and the rook. That should be sufficient for white. The eval bar not giving white that much of an advantage, surprisingly. I would love this if I'm in white's shoes. So king f1 recommended, king e3 played. Rook g3 check, king f2, rook g5, once again threatening the fork. On rook g2 check, yeah, I guess black is a little safer with this skewer, it seems. We still play this, you still get this, right? I'm not a big fan of trading off those rooks and reducing my attacking forces. Bobby with rook g5, threatening rook f5 Forcosaurus Rex. So king e2, that's going to allow the repetition. The way to avoid the repetition is to play queen e8. King e2 was played, and Bobby took the repetition. You can't take here. Coming back to this, once again, this is no longer any good. Queen e8 is the way to avoid the repetition and try to keep fighting. But if you play here, then you've got rook g2 check. And after king f1, rook takes c2. Big difference is there's no queen fork anymore, is there? Now you can pick up the bishop, but the eval bar has this dead equal now. I'll give check. If he comes here, I'll take that, hit the queen. Have to move your queen to safety, give him check, etc. And I now have a passed pawn I can work with. So throw in one more check, and if he comes and starts zigzagging, we'll push our pawn. Bobby content to go ahead and take that repetition.